Major bombshell news yesterday. Former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon taken into custody by the Southern District of New York. Key to Trump's threat, charged with defrauding border wall supporters. I got a lot of thoughts on this one, Krystal. It's interesting because this scheme was orchestrated by this guy named Brian Kolfage. Brian Kolfage launched a GoFundMe where they raised $25 million with the help of Steve Bannon, with the help of Fox News, multiple Fox News appearances, and other people in conservative media, saying we are going to build a portion of the wall since Democrats are denying Donald Trump the ability in order to build his wall. This was an almost immediate grift that was spotted very early on. And I'm very proud. When I used to work at The Caller, we spearheaded a lot of the early investigations into his work, called him out, talked about how he was defrauding some of these donors and so much more. None of it seemed to come to pass until yesterday, when the Southern District of New York said that Kolfage and Bannon conspired together to raise $25 million, then use much of those proceeds to pay for their personal expenses. Bannon himself, according to the indictment, took away over $1 million. Kolfage spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on personal spending and many of these others. And what makes this a particular fraud is donors were repeatedly ensured that 100% of the money would be raised to build the wall. Bannon and others described it at the time as a volunteer organization. After the Southern District of New York started inquiring, they actually deleted that part off their website, which is very sketchy, using encrypted apps and so much more. But I just think it goes to show how there is nothing that makes you more of a lowlife in American politics than defrauding good people who believe in your message, stealing their money, and then saying that you're actually working towards a political end. I mean, it's just absolutely egregious. This, by the way, this is only the illegal things that happened. Like, this was a clownish scheme which ended up being caught. But this type of stuff happens every single day in Washington. So I don't want people to think it's just limited to Steve Bannon.
It certainly does. And by the way, he's under investigation for some other business dealings as well. So this may be tip of the iceberg with him. But you're absolutely right. I mean, to defraud people, to bilk people who are supposedly on your team, on your side, Fox News absolutely complicit in lifting this up. It did not take a rocket scientist to look at this thing and see that there were problems. The original GoFundMe was pulled because there was no nonprofit organization associated with it. Then they bring in Bannon. They sort of retool, reframe the project to be, originally it was supposed to be like, we're just going to give this money to the government to build the wall. And they're like, it doesn't really work that way. So then they create this whole elaborate scheme. And I mean, we both read the indictment. They've got him dead to rights. They've got the text messages talking about how they're going to conceal the payment schemes, right? So it's very clear they knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew that it was much different than what they were representing to these donors. And you're talking about, look, I know on the left there's not going to be a lot of sympathy for people who sent in money to build the wall, but you're talking about a 7-year-old kid was one of the larger donors who raised money through a hot chocolate stand and through tours of his artifacts collection. So look, you may not love their politics, but what was done to them is disgusting, and everybody involved,
citizens, right? They deserve representation.
And by the way, look, Kurt Schilling was involved. Chris Kobach was. They're not charged. I want to be clear. They were on the board. Eric Prince was on the board. So you've got a whole cast of characters who are involved in this thing. By the way, let's take a look at Bannon being arrested yesterday, and he says this is all an elaborate scheme to buy whoever to keep them from building the wall. Let's take a listen.
This entire fiasco is to stop people who want to build the wall.
He says this entire fiasco is to stop people from building the wall. And look, I know I said last week that I think Bannon should go to the Trump campaign, but you know what? This has always been at the heart of one of the biggest problems with him, which is that all these dealings with the Chinese billionaire and all these sketchy funds that are coming in from very weird places. He was hanging out. He was literally arrested on that Chinese billionaire billionaire's yacht, which he's been living on for the last 2 months.
There's a lot of boat connectivity here.
There is a lot. Oh, yeah. I was just telling them. So Brian Colfage, the other co-conspirator, actually used some of his ill-gotten gains in order to go to a Trump boat parade.
Yeah, he bought a boat.
He is a confirmed member of the Trump Boat Caucus.
Bought a boat, went to the boat parade. I can't remember one of the ones down in Florida.
I am so repulsed by so much of this because there is like I said, nothing that makes you more of a lowlife than to exploit good-meaning people who see you and think that you are doing something better, pocket their money, misrepresent what you are going to do about it. And I am very glad. I saw some people saying this is a witch hunt. But look, I would love to also introduce them to Rick Wilson and the Never Trumpers and the Lincoln Project and many of these other grifters. But I think all grifters should be taken down for this type of activity, and I think the legal ones should be taken down as well. And this is something that really bothers me too, which is that good-meaning people believed in that Trump 2016 message. And people like him and many others who have become very rich off Fox News and others have been exploiting so many of the people who voted for Donald Trump in 2016. The cadre around him have been profiting and have gotten rich off the backs who actually gave him a chance. And there is nothing that enrages me more than to see this type of behavior.
Yeah. And I think you're right to point out this is like the clearly illegal Keystone Cops version of what goes on all the time.
Yes.
Basically.
Exactly.
And there are plenty who are exploiting the like MSNBC resistance, boomers, and some of it is entirely legal. The latest book, that rolls out some bizarre Russia conspiracy that's built on absolutely nothing, right? I mean, so this is a clearly illegal and sort of cartoonish and buffoonish version of what is frequently done in this town every single day. But you still, look, they deserve to have a fair hearing and fair trial, all that stuff. But if you read the details in this indictment, it is pretty clear what went down and that they knew what they were doing was wrong and needed to be hid from the public.
There's a strong grifting instinct amongst these people, the anti-establishment left and right, or even in this case, establishments, right? And especially whenever it comes to Russiagate and so much more. And it's actually incumbent upon people who align with them, like I do. In some respects, I think Steve Bannon is a very smart guy, to be like, no, you're a scumbag for what you did to these people because they believed in you and they actually put their trust in you and they thought they were donating towards a project and you stole their money. But I want to make it clear, this isn't just Bannon. This is what we've been talking about. And I have the perfect example of news that broke almost exactly at the same time. Former House Speaker Paul Ryan, he's up to something. He, I said while we're on the subject of Republican grifters, is starting something called a blank check company, raising $300 million with the help of Mitt Romney's son in order to buy an undisclosed company. I'll spare you the financial details. Basically, Mr. Ryan's going to Wall Street. He's raising a whole bunch of money. He wants to dip his toes into the private equity game and into the acquisition game and so much more. At this point, I'm actually trying to remember a Republican speaker who is not on the, or Republican leader who has not been on the Wall Street dole. So you've got Boehner, he's on the cannabis Wall Street dole. You've got Paul Ryan, obviously doing this. I think Newt Gingrich at one point worked for like Lehman Brothers or somebody as a historian. He claimed that for a long time.
Let's not forget Eric Cantor.
Eric Cantor, former Republican leader, is working in a boutique investment firm. You just love to see them work in small businesses. I was going through my mind yesterday. I was like, oh, you got Gingrich. And
that's the whole game.
Cantor, Paul Ryan. So no Republican leader of the last 25 years, so that takes me all the way back to 1994, is not at one point been employed by Wall Street. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I just want everybody to know.
Public service.
This is the real grift, okay? Like, yes, Bannon stole $1 million. This is $300 million with the help of Mitt Romney's son and so much more. You don't think it's disgusting and corrupt for the former House Speaker to be entering this extremely, while legal, very opaque financial instruments and other things? How are Americans supposed to have any trust in their government when they see this guy bolt to Wall Street to go get filthy rich whenever he was from Wisconsin?
Yeah, and we saw, the specter of many senators using potentially inside information that they had to
insider trade.
Stocks.
Right.
On another note, Hunter Biden made an appearance at the DNC last night. So, and again, like some of these things are legal, right? Are perfectly legal, but that doesn't make them right. That doesn't mean that we should close our eyes to them. That doesn't mean that we should pretend that this is all okay. We do not pretend that it is okay here.
Okay, certainly not.
All right, more rising for you after this.